Okay, and welcome to part 2 of my 100 tips for the DJI Neo 2. Now, if you've come straight to this video, I definitely recommend checking out part 1 afterwards, because together they create over 100 tips to help you get the very best from your Neo 2. In part 1, I looked at drone only mode, the DJI Fly app, Find My Drone, quick shots, voice and gesture control, screen rates and resolution, and loads of little tricks to help you get better footage, including one to get you a better night's sleep. Now it's going to be time to take things a little step further, and in this part I'm going to be covering battery health, safety settings, dedicated controller, pro mode, cruise control, button customization, flying over water, and plenty more practical tips that I've picked up from using the Neo 2 over the last few months. And like I said in part 1, this video isn't sponsored by DJI. So if you honestly enjoy drone reviews, tips, tutorials, I'd really appreciate it if you could do a like, subscribe and turn on the notifications. Everything I'm about to share comes from my own experience of flying with the DJI Neo 2 with one aim, and that's to give you my honest advice and practical tips that you can actually use. I have tried to be as thorough as possible, but with the size of the video I may have left something out. So there's no need to tell me if I have. It's not going to make me feel any better knowing that I've just wasted 2 weeks of my life. So with that out of the way, let's carry on with tip number 52. Now, none of anything I've said in part 1 will matter if your battery runs out halfway through a flight. So the good news is that there are a few simple habits that will not only help you get the most out of every battery, but also keep them performing much longer. The first thing is to check the battery health regularly. So before you take off, have a quick look at the battery level, check there aren't any warning messages in the DJI Fly app. It only takes a few seconds, but it could save you from cutting a flight short. Also look at labelling your batteries. If you own more than one battery, number them with a small sticker or a marker pen. And that's going to make it much easier to rotate them evenly, and it also helps you identify a battery if one ever starts behaving differently from the others. It also means you're not overusing the same battery time and time again and ignore the others. Next is to keep the battery cool in summer. Now, temperature does have a big impact on battery performance, and if you're flying in summer, try and keep your spare batteries away from the sun, tucked in a rucksack or something until you need them, somewhere in the shade. Because using a hot battery that's been baked in the sun can cause no end of problems, so try and keep them cool. But also the reverse is true. So you also need to keep the batteries warm in winter. So as I said, temperature has a big impact on battery performance, and if you are flying in winter, keep your spare batteries in a pocket or inside your jacket until you need them. A warm battery will give you a better performance than one that's been sitting getting cold in a backpack all morning. Also use the low battery warning as a reminder. Don't wait for the drone to force a landing. When you get the first low battery warning, start thinking about finishing the shot and heading back. That way you're going to be landing on newer terms rather than the drones. And don't wait until the battery is zero either. It can be tempting to squeeze every last minute of the battery, especially when the actual flight time is only 9 or 10 minutes, but I wouldn't recommend it. Normally, I do tend to land with around about 15 or 20% remaining. Although it does sound a lot, in reality, it's only a minute or two or even less. But it does give you a safety margin if the wind picks up or you need a second attempt at landing, and it's much kinder to the battery in the long run. And please let the batteries cool before charging. After a flight, the battery is going to be warm. So rather than putting it straight on charge, let it cool down to room temperature first. Charging a hot battery can shorten its lifespan, so a little bit of patience is really going to pay off in the future. Also, you don't want to store your batteries fully charged. If you're not planning on flying for a while, don't leave your batteries sitting somewhere at 100%. Batteries last longer when they're stored at around about 40 to 60%, and the DJI intelligent batteries will normally discharge themselves automatically after a few days. And remember to carry a spare battery. If you only buy one accessory for your DJI Neo 2, make it an extra battery. The flight time always seems to disappear quicker than you expect, and having a spare battery means that you can keep filming instead of packing up just as the lighting gets good. So looking after the batteries means that you will spend a lot more time flying, and if you want a complete breakdown on battery usage and care, there's another video up here that you can watch. Now, if you want to get the very best out of this little drone, there's one more option of control, and that's the dedicated controller, because it transforms the way that the DJI Neo 2 flies. It gives you much smoother control, greater precision, and it opens up creative shots that are hard to achieve when you're using the drone or the app alone. So if you are serious about improving your flying, capturing more cinematic videos, then this is the setup that I'd recommend. Now, I use the RC2, but it's the same features basically on the RCN3. So the first one is going to be configuring the controller before flying. And one thing I often do is spend a minute or two configuring everything before I take off. Doing all those checks on the ground means you can concentrate on flying once the drone is in the air. So first of all, you will adjust your safety settings. And this is one of the biggest benefits of flying with the DJI controller, because you've got access to the safety menu. Here you can adjust the return to home height, the maximum altitude and the maximum distance. So if you've left it too low and you lose the drone signal, it could head straight towards the normal obstacle that's between you and coming home. Also, try to avoid crashing. So to do this, you want to make sure that your obstacle avoidance is switched on and is on the section that you actually want to use. Now, personally, I prefer bypass, but sometimes brake is the better option. And you can change this via the screen by using the icon on the top right. Another thing I'd recommend is to turn on the grid lines for the rule of thirds. Now, if you only make one change to the settings in the DJI Fly app, make it this one, because it makes it much easier to keep your horizon level and to place your subject in a much stronger position within the frame. It's a simple setting, but again, it does make a surprisingly big difference. And then use the controller to perfect your composition. So rather than rushing the shot, stop for a minute, check your framing, level the horizon, and think about your composition before you record. Again, it's one of those things that only takes a few seconds, planning the shot, but it will save minutes in editing. And use the subject tracking only when it makes sense. Now, subject tracking is brilliant, but don't feel that you have to use it all the time. Sometimes a manually flown shot looks much smoother and more natural. So think of tracking as another tool rather than the answer to every situation. And when you are flying, slow down your stick movements, because one of the biggest mistakes new pilots make is moving the sticks too aggressively. Small, gentle movements almost always produce better looking footage. So if you think you are flying slowly enough, slow it down a little bit more. And the Neo 2 will instantly look much more cinematic. And remember that you need to fly with a story in mind. So before taking off, ask yourself one question. What are you trying to show? Is it going to be a castle, a mountain trail, a beach, or someone riding a bike? Having a plan before you actually launch the drone gives you much better footage than simply looking around for something interesting. And you want to see about shooting in segments. And by this, I mean don't try to shoot everything at once. Pick your subject and stick to it. So maybe 20 to 30 seconds max, not 2 or 3 minutes, because no one wants to watch 2 or 3 minutes of you flying along a beach. And mix manual flying with the intelligent flight modes. And some of the best edits combine both. So start with a manually flown reveal, switch to a follow, and then finish with a circle or a rocket quick shot. And mixing up different styles of footage makes your videos much more engaging. And you also want to try about shooting from different angles for the same shot. So if you're walking, do a follow, followed by a side shot and then a dolly track, and then combine them together to make a much more interesting shot. But don't stop recording too soon. Once you finish the shot, keep recording for another 5 or 10 seconds. And those extra seconds give you much more flexibility when you're editing and make it much easier to cut the footage to music. Now, when you are using a controller, you need to turn up the screen brightness. Now, this does sound obvious, but it's surprising how many people forget to do this. On a bright day, a dim screen makes it difficult for you to judge framing and your exposure. So before you fly, turn your phone or your controller's brightness up. And that simple change can make flying much easier. Also check your frame rate, resolution and aspect. I've had times where I've done a day's filming only to find out that I filmed some in 1080p and others in 4K, or some in portrait mode instead of landscape. So make sure you check, otherwise you would have wasted a full day. And always do a screen record if you can. It means that if something goes wrong, you're going to have a record. So just swipe down on the RC2 if you have one, and there'll be the option there for screen record. Okay, so that's 75 tips down and only another 25 to do. So hopefully you've already picked up some useful ideas. Now, because this video isn't sponsored by DJI, I do have to do all the usual stuff about mentioning, liking and subscribing, but it does really make a difference. It helps the channel grow, and it means I can make honest videos and say exactly what I think about the drones that I review. I also mentioned earlier how you can get a good night's sleep, and that's with a little support via Buy Me a Coffee. Of course, simply watching and liking already means you help more than you might think, but if you would like to support the channel a little further, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link down in the description below. Now, there's absolutely no pressure, mainly because I don't know where any of you live, but every coffee donation does really help. Even £1, $1 or €1, when it's added together, does help me buy new equipment that would otherwise be out of my reach, and it means I can spend more time in, testing drones and making videos like this. It also means that if you've made it this far and you haven't switched the video off, you've clearly found some of my ramblings useful, and to be honest, you know you want to buy me a coffee. Okay, back to it then. So number 76, underexpose your image. If you're shooting in auto and you have the exposure to -0.3 or -0.7, that's going to be a bonus, because if an image is underexposed, you can always bring the shadows back in post. If an image is overexposed, then you're stuffed and you can't get any of the blown out highlights back. Now, one setting I'd always recommend turning on is overexposure warning or the zebra stripes. So if parts of your image are too bright and you're losing detail, stripe lines are going to appear in those areas, and it's a quick way to spot blown out highlights before you start recording. Now, I use this all the time, especially when I'm filming skies or over water, to make sure that I don't lose any important detail. Another thing you want to do is to use the histogram. So the histogram is one of the most important and useful exposure tools on the drone. So instead of judging the brightness from the screen, use the histogram. If the graph is pushed to the outer edge, you're probably either losing the details in the shadows or the highlights. And it's a much more accurate way to expose your footage correctly, especially when you're in bright sunlight. Now, this one is more for doing things like social media. So you want to turn on the frame guides for the 9x16. So if you do create content for YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, TikTok, turn on the frame guides. The guides will show you what the safe area is for vertical shooting while your drone is still recorded in the full 16:9. This means that you can frame your image and subject correctly for social media without losing the flexibility of a widescreen recording. Now, I use this all the time because it means I can create one flight that works for both YouTube and vertical platforms without having to rotate the gimbal or fly the shot twice. Now, whichever controller you has either function buttons or custom buttons which can enable shortcuts. So use these to your advantage and add whatever functions you use the most. And for me, I always have one set to cruise control. And use cruise control for smooth cinematic shots. And it's perfect when you want to do a long, smooth, consistent movement. So instead of consistently trying to hold the sticks perfectly set at the speed and height that you want, actively use cruise control and let the drone maintain the movement for you. It's one of the easiest ways that your footage is to look more professional, and there is another video up here if you want to know more about cruise control. And then also combine cruise control with stick movements. So don't just let the drone fly in a straight line. While cruise control is keeping the drone moving smoothly, you can concentrate on gently tilting the gimbal or doing a slow yawn so the drone is going towards your subject or doing something which is more of a reveal. And splitting the workload like this means that you are going to get much smoother cinematic shots. So you also want to see about using cruise control for reveals. Now, one of my favourite uses is, as I just said, reveal shots. So set the drone moving smoothly and then slowly bring a subject into view by adjusting the gimbal or flying past a tree, a building or a rock. And because the drone maintains a constant speed, the reveal looks much smoother and far more controlled than trying to fly it manually. Now, for the best quality, you need to switch over to Pro mode. So if you are serious about improving your footage, don't be afraid to switch from Auto to Pro. Auto is brilliant when you're starting out, but Pro mode does give you more control over things like the ISO and the shutter speed. It takes a little bit more practice, but the reward is much more consistent footage that's easier to edit later. So when it comes to the ISO, you want to keep that as low as possible, because the ISO controls the camera's sensitivity to light. So the higher the ISO, the brighter the image. But the trade-off is that you're going to get more digital noise and a softer looking picture. So whenever possible, keep your ISO at the lowest possible value and then adjust your shutter speed or use an ND filter instead. And try following the 180-degree rule if you're using ND filters, because that's going to give you really nice, smooth cinematic motion. So as a guide, set your shutter speed to roughly double that of your frame rate. So if you're filming at 30 frames a second, aim for a shutter speed of around about 1/60th a second. And if you film it at 60 frames a second, aim for a shutter speed of 1/120th of a second. Now, the ND filters I use are the ones from Freewell, and there is a link in the description below. Now, you also need to be careful about where you fly, and flying over water is one of the most dangerous. So if you are flying over water, keep a close eye on your battery level. You don't want the drone deciding it's time to land when it's still over a lake, a river or the sea. So give yourself plenty of time to get back to shore and land safely rather than pushing the battery to the limits. You also need to fly higher than you think. Water can sometimes confuse the drone's downwards vision sensors because the reflections and a lack of texture make it hard to judge the height accurately. So when flying over water, I do tend to avoid skimming the surface unless I really need to. Keeping that extra little bit of height gives you much better safety margin, especially when there's waves, reflections or changing light conditions. And there's a video on flying over water up here too. Now, you also need to watch the wind speed over water because wind is often stronger over water than it feels on shore. And because your Neo 2 has to work much harder and hold its position, the battery is going to drain a lot faster. So before heading out over water, check the wind conditions, always fly out into the wind and return with the wind, and keep an eye on your battery level and always leave plenty of power to make sure that you come back safely. It's much better to cut the flight short than to risk running low on the battery power over water. And now finally, a section that applies to all scenarios. So number 90 is to fly during the golden hour, because the hour after sunrise and the hour before sunset produces the best light of the day. The light is going to be softer, the colours richer and the shadows less harsh. Even an average looking location can look fantastic during the golden hour. Now the next one sounds obvious, but that's to keep your lens clean. And fingerprints and smudges can completely ruin your footage. So before every flight, give the camera lens a quick wipe down with a microfiber cloth. It only takes a second. But the difference can be surprising. Also watch the weather. Don't just look at whether or not it's going to rain. Check the wind as well. The Neo 2 is a lightweight drone, so strong winds will affect the battery life, the tracking and the overall smoothness of your footage. So if in doubt, wait for calmer conditions. Also, only buy the accessories that actually matter. It's easy to spend money on accessories that you don't really need. Personally, I prioritise a battery, charging hub, extra propellers and a good carrying case and maybe some MD filters. Those are the things you're going to use all the time. Now, one of the biggest tips as well is don't worry about flying perfectly. Every drone pilot makes mistakes. Everyone has shaky flights, missed shots or lands in the wrong place. But the more you fly, the more natural the experience becomes. So don't be afraid to get out there and practice. And when you are, respect other people. One thing that's easy to forget is that not everyone likes drones as much as we do. So be considerate, avoid flying too close to people and always respect the local rules and privacy, and keep the drone within the visual line of sight, because there's always going to be someone there who wants to report you for flying the drone just because they're not happy. So don't give them the opportunity. It's not worth it at the end of the day. Plus, it's only a small drone, so do you really need to go miles out? Now, another thing I didn't bank on doing, but one thing that I have learned the hard way is to learn the emergency stop. And this is important if the drone gets into difficulty, maybe in a tree or somewhere where the propellers can cause damage. So learn how to shut them down. And you won't improve by watching YouTube videos, so you need to fly regularly. You are going to improve by flying. Even if it's only 10 minutes in a local park, every flight is going to build your confidence and improve your flying skills. And don't forget to have fun. It's easy to get caught up chasing the perfect shot or worrying about settings. The reason you bought the DJI Neo 2 in the first place was to have fun. It's an incredible little drone, so enjoy flying it. And number 100 is to use the right flying method, so I'm going to finish where I started. The Neo 2 gives you 3 different ways to fly the drone. You've got drone only when you want speed and convenience. You've got the fly app when you want more control without carrying extra gear. And then you've got a dedicated controller when you want the best flying experience and the best footage. And learning when to use each is probably the biggest tip I can give any Neo 2 owner. So that's it. That's the 100 tips for the DJI Neo 2. Hopefully you've picked up a few new ideas, whether or not you've just bought your Neo 2 or whether or not you've been flying for a while. As I said earlier, if you haven't watched part 1, I would recommend watching it. It does contain some really useful tips. And as always, none of this is sponsored. Everything I've shared comes from my own experience of using the DJI Neo 2, and my goal is to simply pass on the things I've learned that might help you get better photos, smoother videos, and enjoy flying a little bit more. If you have found the video useful, I'd really appreciate it if you could give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It does generally help more than you think, and it also means, as I said, I can make honest reviews and tutorials and tips like this. And if you'd like to support it a little bit further, there's also the option for buy me a coffee in the description below. There's absolutely no pressure, but every coffee, even £1 to £2 or dollars or euros, does go towards new equipment, more testing and more time creating videos like this. Either way, thank you so much for watching the video and supporting the channel. If you do want to see any videos on any of the DJI drones, let me know in the comments below and I'll do my best to help you out. Take care, happy flying, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.